לפי מיטב המסורת של הכנס, מושב הבוקר שלנו יחשוף נתונים חדשים מהארץ ומהעולם, וידון בחזון לרדיו ציבורי ומסחרי בעולם טכנולוגי שמשתנה במהירות. את המושב תפתח גברת אניקה ניברג פרנקנהאוזר, מנהלת המדיה הראשונה של ה-EBU, איגוד השידור האירופי, שאחראית על מחלקות הרדיו והטלוויזיה באיגוד. התחילה את דרכה ככתבת ועורכת, גם ברדיו, גם בפרינט, בטלוויזיה, באינטרנט, הייתה ראש מחלקת החדשות בשפה השוודית בפינלנד, מנהלת תוכניות, נשיאת הפורום העולמי לשידור דיגיטלי, DAB, וממקימי כנס הרדיו האירופי הגדול כנראה בעולם, רדיו דייז, והיום היא תציג הערכת מצב ונתונים על הרדיו האירופאי. אניקה, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I feel honored and thrilled. This is my first time ever to Israel, and I'm already regretting the fact that I have to cut my visit very short. You've already heard my name many times, and you can see it up here. I am a Swedish-speaking Finn. I currently live in France and work in Switzerland, and I travel a lot around, mostly Europe, not often outside, but sometimes, as you can see now. In my job as a media director of the EBU, the first ever actually media director, so that means in practice that I'm responsible for all the content that somehow travels through the European Broadcasting Union on its way from a member to other members or to somebody else. Like, for instance, the Eurovision Song Contest, which is upcoming with its 60th edition this spring. The European Broadcasting Union stretches outside Europe. It stretches outside core Europe. It encompasses North Africa. So all the North African countries are members of the European Broadcasting Union, as is IBA from Israel. And it also stretches far east. So we have Russia as a member, or Russian broadcasters. Actually, countries are not members, but companies are members. And we also have a lot of members in the southern part of what used to be the Soviet Union. So when I'm asked why it's so broad, I always answer, the official answer is that it is the ITU broadcasting area. And then I sincerely hope that nobody's going to ask me what the ITU broadcasting area is, because I frankly don't know exactly. But we also, we actually have offices around the world. We have an office in Washington, we have an office in Singapore, one in Moscow. And we work together with many other broadcasting unions. There is a World Broadcasting Union, so we have sister unions around the world that we work together with. For instance, on freedom of speech, that's one of the latest cooperations. And we also stretch our broadcasting network, a physical network, a satellite-based network, all over the world, and it is actually the largest broadcasting network that exists in the world. So this is based in Europe, this union, but it stretches all over. It represents public service broadcasting. So we are representing broadcasters. That's where we come from. But today, I personally, and so do many of my colleagues, do not speak about public service broadcasting, but rather about PSM, by which we mean public service media. Thereby reflecting the current media situation in the world, because it's not only about broadcasting anymore, it is about media. We're all on the internet, we're all having services on the internet, we have web services, we're working on social media, we're doing all kinds of things that go beyond broadcasting. But as you will see from or hear from my presentation today, this is also a bit of a conflict, the relationship between broadcasting and broadband. And part of what I will be speaking about when it comes to radio reflects this. I'll try to give you a sort of a glimpse But remember, this is not the full picture. This is a glimpse of what radio broadcasting is about in Europe today, what radio is about in Europe today. And it is from the perspective of the European Broadcasting Union. So I'm going to present to you some of the initiatives that we are supporting. That won't cover the whole picture, because there's a lot more going on in radio and there's a lot more going around in media generally. If you want to find out more, I'll give you the website where you can find a lot more at the end, and my own contact details so that you can contact me if there's more you want to find out. Let's start with Europe. We have 400 million weekly listeners to radio, 82.8% of the population. And the figures I'm showing you now in the beginning are very, very fresh. They just came out of the oven. So they're really reflecting the situation as we see it today. The average daily listening time is still very high, more than 3 hours. It's been pretty stable, I must say, these figures, for many, many years. Already 15 years ago, I used to say 80% of the Europeans listen to radio on an average 3 hours per day, and it's still true. A lot of the people listen to radio in cars. As the population grows and as commuting time grows, lots of people spend time in their cars. This goes particularly for some countries, like, for instance, Germany. It is one of the most trusted medias in Europe. In Sweden, for instance, the Swedish Broadcasting Corporation, SR, Swedish Radio, has year after year come in as the most trusted company in Sweden. And that's very particular. So a lot of people trust radio that do not necessarily trust other media. It reaches 83.4% of young adults every week. So remember, 82.5, or was it 82.8, sorry, daily listening, but 83.4 young adults. This is one of the challenges of radio. We are, although the figures are stable, losing young audiences. Not very fast, but it is a stable decline. This is one of the reasons that the EBU, together with broadcasters around the world, has embarked on projects to support radio. That we are seeing that we are losing the young audiences. Another reason is that we do not believe that radio can stay analog, in a digital world, which this picture is all about. When everything moves into zeros and ones, we don't think that FM really has a future, although we do believe that FM will be around for many, many years from now. We do not think it's going to change very fast. There's going to be a very long transition. But as a sort of a future scenario, the belief of the European Broadcasting Union is that radio has to go digital. And underlying that assumption is also that we say radio goes digital. With that, we mean that it goes broadcasting digital, that there needs to be broadcasting radio as digital radio. We don't mean that radio goes digital, meaning it moves over to the internet. Now, this is a very, very contested sort of proposition, because there are many people out there who say, well, why do you bother with broadcasting? You know, we don't need that. IP or broadband or whatever you call it, telecommunications technology is going to take care of all of it. So why do you worry? People listen to radio on the internet all the time. Yes, they do. That's true. But imagine a situation, let's take Tel Aviv. With the morning traffic you have, I've just been sitting in it for a little while, and the same morning traffic you find everywhere in the world today. Now, if you would imagine that you would turn off FM, as you have it here, and all that radio listening that I've been hearing in the taxis where I've been sitting this morning and yesterday would move over to the internet, I bet you it wouldn't work. I bet you your telecommunication networks would break down in an instant because they cannot cope with the same time heavy traffic that that broadcasting can cope with. And we'll come back to this notion, but underlying the assumption of one of the initiatives that we are working with, that we are calling Smart Radio, and I'll explain to you what Smart Radio is in a while, is the assumption that, yes, you can listen to radio on the internet. It's great because you can, for instance, listen to NPR in Finland, or you can listen to NPR anywhere in the world, or I can listen to my own broadcaster where I now am in France. But same time listening with a huge load, no, not yet. And you can press engineers towards the wall, and then you can say to them, well, tell me, when do you think, if you think that IP is so fantastic and it's going to take care of broadcasting, tell me when will it? And the answers I get is, well, maybe in 10 years or maybe in 15 years. But today, no. So this is why we believe that radio should not stay analog in a digital world. And when it moves digital, we think it should be broadcast. The other reason that we are working with, for instance, the initiative Smart Radio, is that the young audiences that I told you a while ago that we feel that we are losing, they are moving over to all these devices. They are moving over to listening or using smartphones or tablets. They are increasingly mobile. And of course, what radio is a mobile medium. It is meant to be mobile. And the digital radio standards that I know of are meant to be mobile. They are meant to support radio in a mobile world. But because of this sort of challenge of the young audiences that are increasingly and possibly not really buying old-fashioned radios, fantastic as they are, we saw part of those fantastic old radios in the museum a little bit before, where people have really made elaborate and fantastic and really nice pieces of radios that, would decorate any room. And this is still done, but increasingly those are being abandoned, and at least in Europe, some countries more than others, we see that young audiences are moving over to all kinds of other devices, and they're using these devices for everything. So to us, it would make sense that they also listen to radio on those devices. Why not? They're carrying them around anyway. And again, if they want to listen to radio, particularly if they want to listen to free-to-air radio that doesn't cost them a fortune, they should get broadcast in their phones. So, 2012, a while ago, in spring 2012, I got together with the then director of radio at the BBC, Tim Davey, in Geneva. We sat in the cafeteria for a little while at the EBU headquarters and talked and thought about what shall we do with the future and how could we support radio. And Tim told me and one of my colleagues the story of how he felt that the broadcasters, commercial and public, in the UK had worked together to promote radio. And they were, and are still, driving digital radio in the UK. So Tim was saying, couldn't the European Broadcasting Union do something about this? Couldn't we sort of pull in highly placed CEOs, director generals of public and private radios, not all of them, but those that we think are sympathetic, that would work together with us. Put them in a meeting room, treat them with a nice dinner, and see if we can come up with a common concept. And we did. So in June 2012, we met and we came up with this idea of the Eurochip. The Eurochip immediately caused a lot of confusion because people said, what are you doing? Are you going to develop a chip? What is this? Are you getting... Has the European Broadcasting Union gone completely mad? I mean, you're not developing things. What is this? So they thought we were... And also, it was also partly our fault because we used this picture to promote our campaign. And we got this, what the hell is Eurochip kind of, writings around the world. But what the Eurochip was really about was what I was talking about before, getting the young audiences and supporting broadcast. So this is the sentence that we, those people who gathered in that room, actually in Brussels, in June 2012, agreed on. We support free-to-air broadcast radio, analog and digital, in all devices. And we were thinking about particularly mobile devices. And we were also very keen, even if I said that I do not believe FM has a long future, I think we should go digital. We were very much aware of the fact that today most radios in Europe and most radios probably also in other parts of the world are still FM. So we can't just say that we go digital with everything today. We must take it step by step. But this is the basic assumption behind what we then call the Eurochip. And we also created a memorandum of understanding that we wanted people to sign. And we did a lot of promotion for this. But we very, very quickly realized, particularly when we went worldwide, that this is not going to work because we use, particularly because of the confusion about the euro and the chip, and also the word euro. So we changed the name of the initiative to Smart Radio. Today we talk about Smart Radio. And it is still the same that it was in the beginning. It's this notion of free-to-air broadcast radio, FM, DAB, DAB+. Actually, you could add a long list, a much longer list of digital radio standards there, because we don't say which digital radio standard it could be. It could be DRM, it could be HD radio, it could be just any digital radio standard. And it can be FM, it can be AM, doesn't really matter. The idea is that there is broadcast, and the broadcast backbone is there in all devices. And again, the notion that we need to be where the users are, particularly the young users, and we think that the future of radio lies in the combination of broadcast and broadband working together. This is actually what we call hybrid radio. When we talk about hybrid radio, this is what we are talking about. We think that the hybrid solution where you can use both broadcast and broadband together, particularly in mobile devices, is the best solution for radio forward. Today we have 26 signatories to the MOU. If there's anybody in the room who would like to have the MOU and who would like to sign it and support this campaign, that would be great. Contact me afterwards then, and I'll make sure that you get the MOU. It doesn't it doesn't ask anything of you except your support for the idea and for the initiative. And the more signatories we can get around the world, the better it is. As you see from this one, it is mainly broadcasters, but it can be anybody. It can be an industry body as well. It doesn't have to be just a broadcaster. I'll go a little bit into this sort of notion that I talked about when we started, the broadcast broadband. Why do we think that broadband will not take care of, or IP will not take care of radio? Well, one is the congestion problem that I talked about when I used the example of Tel Aviv. Another one is cost. Norway is the first country in the world that actually will go digital. And towards the end of this month, could actually happen this week. We expect the Norwegian government to take the decision to switch off FM completely. If they do so, they will be the first country in the world both to take the decision and to actually do it in 2017. So Norway has run past many of the other countries. I mean, if somebody would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said it's going to be the UK. But the UK development has slowed down for various reasons. Also, the development in Denmark that was pretty fast onto the road to digital radio. But Norway is really going to do it. Here are the figures. They need 765 DAB+ transmitters to cover all of Norway. Now, this is, of course, because Norway looks like this. It's not flat. It's not like Denmark. Denmark survives with 16 transmitters. It's very unfair. I really think it's unfair. But LTE, that is, LTE stands for an IP-based network, broadband network, a telecommunications network, would need over 1,000 times more. And it would cost much, much more to do so. There are many more examples like this in the presentation. Another one comes from the Netherlands. And mind you, these are these figures are not just sort of taken from the air. They are based on research in every single country. You cannot just give a figure worldwide that says, well, LTE will always be this much more expensive than using a DAB network. You have to go country by country because the situation varies so much, and because building costs are different, and because geography is different. So it's going to be different in Holland, of course. But even in a flat country like Holland, with a dense population, this is how much more expensive it's going to be to build an LTE network compared to building a DAB network. 30 transmitters to cover 31,000 square kilometers in Holland. And, again, unlimited peak capacity. The glory with broadcast is, of course, that it's meant to be a signal from one person to many. And it really doesn't matter how many receive it. Once it's out there, it can be for one person, it can be for 1,000, or it can be for 10 million. It doesn't matter. As I come from Finland, I, of course, had a lot to do with Nokia during Nokia's heyday when they were still dominating the mobile phone industry in the world. And I remember a Nokia engineer who privately, not in public, said to me, you know, I think that if we would be in a situation where we would have telecommunication, but broadcast would not have been invented, somebody would have to invent it, because it makes so much sense. And particularly the combination makes sense. So this is the slide to say it. It doesn't make financial sense to air the same content via LTE if it can be broadcasted. And double distribution is costly, and it's also unnecessary. Another figure, if all radio listening in Sweden would be converted to data, it's more data than carried by all the MNOs, all the mobile network operators in Sweden in 2012. And the transport cost would be 860 million euros. So we're talking huge sums. Now, because we are talking huge sums, of course, from a telecommunication company's network, or particularly a mobile network operator's point of view, this is, of course, a lot of money. Guess who's paying? Yeah, exactly. And however, one of the things that we are doing as part of this Smart Radio initiative, the European Broadcasting Union, together with our members, is we're also talking to the MNOs. We are seeing the Vodafones, the Deutsche Telecommunications, the Telias, all the big telecommunication networks in Europe. And although many of them are very reluctant to go out and talk publicly about it, privately also they are supporting this notion, increasingly, because they are seeing congestion on their networks. Now, obviously, you can understand that if a mobile network operator can get more traffic on his mobile phone through people listening to radio, he is not very willing to give that traffic away to broadcast by installing broadcast in the mobile phone. But if you can convince them, which we've been trying to do, that they will get more traffic on and they can free their capacity to other things, they will generally get more traffic on their mobile phones if we can integrate the broadcast capacity in the mobile phone, and they can free whatever they're doing for other things. They are getting increasingly interesting, but it's not an easy equation. I can tell you, it's quite a lot. Yeah, who will pay in the end? Next slide. Obviously, we will pay. There is yet another notion. This is a real trial. We've been trying how long the battery life is for a mobile phone. If you listen via 3G, it lasts for 6 hours and 53 minutes. If you do the same listening on FM, it lasts for 48 hours and 12 minutes. There are no phones yet with DAB+, so we can't do that trial, but what I do think would happen would be that you would extend the battery life even more. So That's also, from a consumer's point of view, a compelling notion. What we are doing at the moment, and what we've been doing since 2013, is talking to not only the mobile network operators, but we're also talking to the mobile phone manufacturers. We've been talking to Samsung, who are interested, but who have not yet been convinced of there being a business case for a mobile phone with broadcast capacity, FM and DAB+ in Europe. They're thinking about it, but they're not there. They're not there yet. What is more promising is a contact that we have recently established with LG, another of the Korean operators, and they are actually physically at the moment working on putting DAB+ and FM inside 2 models of LG phones to be launched in a year's time in Europe. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we are much, much further down the road together with LG than we have ever been with Samsung. And that would be quite a breakthrough if we can manage to do that. I also believe, this is sort of, again, this is my belief, and the question is, have I convinced, and have I and all the others also managed to convince the Samsung engineers of this, that would be a competitive edge for them on the European market. LG is pretty small on the European market. I think they have something like 4% of the smartphones. So this would be a possibility for them to actually capture part of the market. But it would also be a boost for radio. That's just... So there's still this sort of thinking about where should we be going, and there's a lot of discussion about it. What we also realized we needed to be able to convince the smartphone manufacturers was research into what does the consumer say, which we didn't really have. So the BBC has conducted a study, which you can find also on the internet, into mobile radio, smart radio actually. What would it be like? What would the consumers say about having broadcast radio on their mobile phones? It was very well received. 64% find it appealing. 67% say they would very likely use it. Now, you must remember also this, that all those people who do listen to radio on the internet, they do it primarily when they are in a Wi-Fi area. As soon as they move out of Wi-Fi, it becomes so expensive that they have to switch it off, which is also where we think that the broadcast radio in the mobile phone would come in. So one of the sort of notions that is being put to the people who have been part of this study is to say, well, if you can get broadcast radio in your phone, it would be free to air. Would you then listen? And they say yes. What is even more interesting is that particularly young women are interested, because among losing young audiences, the young women are the one that we are losing most. It's very difficult to get them. So one of the initiatives that we're supporting is smart radio. We keep it separate from digital radio, although the goal somewhere there in the future is more or less the same, for the reason that they are actually working on different things. This is, in a way, the way you would argue in marketing. Focus your message. Be sure that you have one clear message when you go out and talk about things. And in countries where people are very skeptical when it comes to digital radio, smart radio has proven a very good thing to do. Also because we work together with another initiative that stretches beyond Europe and also goes into America. What I'll talk about now when it comes to digital radio is I'll present some of the findings in this initiative. We have produced this year what we call a digital radio toolkit, which is exactly what it says here on the screen. These are the key factors in the deployment of digital radio, the success factors. What are the things that you absolutely need to do if you pull together the sort of experience of everywhere in Europe? This you can also find on the website, so you can download it for free if you're interested in looking at it. These are some of the factors, some of the sort of industry bodies that you will need to attack if you want to be successful with digital radio. And this is what DAB rollout looks like in Europe today. Some countries are leaders, the UK, Norway, Denmark, and Switzerland. Most of them are sort of lagging a little bit behind, but catching up. And some of those that are still thinking about it are Austria, yellow, and Turkey, that is now sort of embarking on digital radio. But compared to 10 years ago, when I was president of World DAB, as it wasn't then, now it's World DMB, the picture is much, much brighter. Unfortunately, my own country, Finland, is not on the map, so I can't do what I hoped for. That is, drive from Rome to Helsinki and listen to digital radio all the way, because we have sold out the frequencies. But that's another story. National issues do matter when it comes to digital radio, national wealth and ICT awareness. The competition in the market, the strength of public service, the advertising, the regulation, all these are factors that have to do with success on digital radio. And they all play in. There's not one solution that fits all. But what this digital radio toolkit shows is that there are success factors, there are learning points that can be put together. That's what we've tried to do with this digital radio toolkit. One is involve all stakeholders. Everybody needs to be on board, otherwise it won't work. Have an industry body. Broadcasters, make sure that everybody is part of that industry body. And approach the authorities with one message. It helps. Set regulatory incentives. Make it sort of attractive to move to digital radio from FM. Use also regulation to adjust things that might have been wrong on the market while you've been in FM. We have lots of examples of that across Europe, where people have used, for instance, a simple thing is that commercial stations in many parts of Europe have had very short licensing periods. That has been rectified by moving into digital. So instead of having 2-3 years or 5 years or something like this, they've been extended to 10 years, which creates much more stability on the market and also gives incentives to invest. Rethink licensing and correct regulation, as I already said. Content. Make sure you add value, because otherwise there's no incentive to move to digital for the listeners. There's no point in just repeating what you already have. Find underserved audiences. That's a very good way of doing it. Both NRK and the BBC in the UK have done this. And rely on well-positioned brands and build on those. That also helps. BBC has done exactly that. Build economies of scale. That's from a broadcaster's point of view. So what you already have, you can build into different parts. So you create a lot of niche channels. But they might have very small audiences, all of them, but it's a compelling offer for the audiences. And have a product strategy, not a platform one. Audiences are not interested in the platforms. They're interested in what kind of content they're getting. Bundle the offer, yes, in advertising, and drive people thereby by all these notions to digital listenerships. And also move stations. Something you've had in analog, you can move to digital. Ensure that you have good coverage. At least public service broadcasters have a remit to cover almost 100% of the country. So 95-96% is really what you need. And extend collaboration to all technological platforms. Make the case for local radio. Radio is very local and regional by its nature. So this is also important. And be flexible with the quality. Use the bit rate so that the bit rate covers what you're providing. And have a switchover plan. Switchover is something that is a red cloth for the commercial radios in Europe. They don't really like to talk about it. But most of them have a very comfortable situation in FM, and there's no drive really behind moving to digital. But you need a switch-off date, otherwise it won't work. You need to have some kind of reliability and know that there's going to happen something. And communicate a single, clear, and accurate message. Digital radio, that communication is now moving across Europe, and target all the related industries. Make affordable devices available. That is, of course, a really important one. And offer future-proof devices as well. Target the car industry. You saw the figures in the beginning. 30 to 40% of the people in Europe listen 30 to 40% of their time in the car, and attend to the aftermarket. I'll run through this a little bit quickly because there's somebody here who looks as if you need to stop soon. There are 6 C's that are important for succeeding with digital radio. But don't worry about the digital radio, because you can download the toolkit and then you can read all these things yourselves. These are important. Coverage, content, cost, communication, collaboration, and the 6th one, commitment. Be really committed, otherwise it won't work. So to conclude, radio in Europe is really a robust medium, but it's a very fragmented market. I didn't talk a lot about that, but we have more than 7,000 radio stations in Europe. So although many of them are owned on the commercial side by big international chains like Energy, SBS, RTL, and the likes of them, they're still very small and very local. And the 7,000 probably doesn't cover all the regional, local, community radio stations that we do have in Europe, which is a strength, but also a weakness, because it's very, very difficult to pull the industry and the radio in Europe together. Difficult to bring them together. The Smart Radio Initiative has received a lot of support because it does just that. It pulls people together around a single, very compelling, very understandable notion. Bring broadcast radio into mobile devices. It's simple and it's easy to support because it's also about the future. Digital radio is gaining momentum in Europe, although it is slow, and the chorus that says IT will fix it is very strong. But I think if I would give you one common message, it is work together. I think this is what I've been seeing over the years that I have been working with radio, that if you remain scattered, fragmented as a market, you will lose much more than you will gain if you can pull your messages together and if you can work together. That goes for whatever you're doing. Radio deserves it, and the listeners deserve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annika. It was fascinating. We have time for just 1 or 2 questions. Yes.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, how is it possible that a woman, and I particularly emphasize woman, who comes from a small country as Finland, who studied arts rather than journalism, becomes one of the most successful people in communication? What is your secret?
Wow, that's a very small question. Very easy to answer. I don't know. I think well, let's say like this. One of the things I've sort of realized moving to France and Switzerland and then looking at both countries is that the countries I come from are not always equal when it comes to gender equality. But in one sense, they are. You do not have to choose between a career and a family as a woman in the Nordic countries. Truly, you don't have to. It's not only that you're supported practically. We have long maternity leaves, and we have childcare that is in place and helps us. It is also part of the sort of the understanding of societies, that we have children and we support children, and women can do it as well. So maybe that gives you sort of you take it for granted when you come from there. And I'm appalled by coming to Switzerland, where you have 3 months maternity leave, then you have to get back to work, and you have to sort of arrange more or less everything yourself, and it costs you a fortune. And it's not only that, there is still this sort of general understanding in society that, well, it would be better if the women would stay at home. For instance, they have this completely crazy thing that children between, I think, 8 and 12, 13, something like that, a period in school, they don't go to school on Wednesdays. So all the Swiss women in my workplace work 80%, because on Wednesdays they have to be home and take care of the children. Now, what sort of support is that? It's really strange. So in a way, what I'm saying is that if you come from a country like I do, and it's not only Finland, it's all the Nordic countries are the same, because you don't have to choose, you take your place, in a way. And sure, we can do it as well as everybody else, as all of you men here.
You talked about young adults listening
Yes.
to the radio. What
Yeah.
ages do you mean?
Well, most of the time when we talk about young audiences, we mean 18 or 15 to 34. So most of these studies, when you do research into audience research in Europe, you go 15 to 24, 25 to 34, and then onwards. So it's the 15 to 34 bracket. Difficult to reach, particularly when you're talking 15 to 24, because every 5 years, what they're interested in has changed. So it's really a huge challenge for any radio station to renew the offer constantly, unless you have to sort of change the people you work with constantly. Not easy. I've done it, I know.
You talked about the technology, but do you think there's a shift in content since there are podcasts and music streaming services?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that sort of form that is technology and content can be totally separated. I do think that when technology comes along and provides new possibilities, it also changes content. It takes a little while to do so because most of the time, according to my experience at least, what we tend to do is to sort of take the content that we know and move it to a new technology. We do it the other way around also. We're given new production technology, but we still use the old methods. So we're a little bit slow, although we think it's fantastic. It changes, but I don't think the fundamental sort of notion of what audio is really changes. We're telling each other stories, or we are playing music to each other. But I really think the basic notion is this storytelling. And to me, the internet and the possibilities that the web has brought with it are fantastic. It's like opening up a new box of possibilities that you can combine in fantastic ways. So and I think if you look at what the web is, and you look 5 years back in time and think about what has happened and how the changes are coming along. They're not huge, but they're small, and they're positive developments, I think. It might change. I'm not sure it changes the basic storytelling in radio, but I think it changes the way we are doing the offering to the audiences, because we can use many platforms at the same time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.